we have to complete the Grantha of Dhyanam. We have stopped in between. It's only 2-3 pages left. That's the end of it. Whenever a Granth is taken, it's always, one should notice, one should remember, one must complete the Grantha. In between, should not stop it. Like when you do puja, you cannot stop in the middle. It has to be continuous. When you do yajna, you might have noticed in televisions and all that, or in real. While doing the yajna, you are not supposed to get up. You have to be continuously there. Somebody can argue that why not we get up in between and then again continue from where we have left. Logically it is right, but technically it is not right. There are certain things which needs the continuity. Then only the impact that comes in that. If you break the chain in between, then it has to be started again from the beginning. But at least one should maintain in such things, especially in the case of even our thoughts. When you are thinking something, suppose in between something else comes, you break the thought and then again when you restart, it is not the same. There is a change. So the effect on that is different. And on these things, especially on the Vedantic or spiritual subjects, if we have that discontinuity, the purpose for which we are doing this is for the right perception of the Vedantic principles and spirituality, so that the mind, which is already confused, complicated, manifested and manipulated, has to be brought into the stillness. The stillness is that it is not still as a rock. That's not the stillness. The stillness of the mind is different from the stillness of an object. The stillness of the mind is that the mind is still when the external objective thoughts or desires or intentions are interpreted and intruded into the mind, which is already occupied by the reflection of the knowledge that is being provided by the self or the jnanam, is called the stillness. To make it still, if the intrusion or the disturbance by the thoughts of the externalities, when it is created, there is a incompatibility in the mind. That which is existing and that which is introduced has an incompatibility. Whenever there is an incompatibility, there is an agitation. This is what is called as agitation of the mind. So when that is not there, only the jnanam is there, that is called the stillness. You understood? Stillness is that there is nothing, or just like a rock. No, it is there. But the stillness is that it is already synchronized with the nature, with the prakriti, with the purusha, or with the reality of the self. That is known as stillness. like in a sea. The sea is calm, still, means it's not that there is no water. There's water, activities of water are there, but only thing the wave is not there because of the disturbance. So it is still, we call it. The water is still, but it's all full with all everything. Whenever there is a wind or a disturbance of the earth takes place while rotating, there's a disturbance to the surface of the water, so the waves are created. Same way, when there is a disturbance to the surface of the mind, like surface of the sea, see, inner sea is never affected. Whatever tilting or taking take place, whenever you take some liquid in a utensil, whenever you tilt or whatever you do, all the impacts that is visible or affected is only on the superficial surface, not the internal of it. So the inner sea is never disturbed. It is only the external of the sea. Same way, the mind's agitation is only on the external, not in the depth of the mind. In the depth of the mind, only knowledge is there. That's why we use the term that go inside. We say that. Search inside, go inside, listen to that what is inside. What is that inside? Inside is the bottom of the mind. Or let me call it as bottom. Here, in this case, when I'm comparing with sea and utensil and all that, let me call it as there is nothing called bottom or superficial. That means that which is superficial, that is external part of the mind, or that is superficial in the mind. It can be like this, superficial, anywhere, all around. It can be superficial. Inside is the mind, inside the knowledge. Like we had explained about the spandanam and the heart, the mind, the heart, where the middle of the heart, where the deity is involved and things like that. So the disturbance is only causing to the surface of it. Then how? That means it is not very significant. How is it affecting our life? When it is not affecting the depth of the mind and only the superficial or the external of the mind, and superficial, not external, superficial of the mind, super surface of the mind, why are we not able to gain that peace? Why are we not able to connect with ourselves, that inner self? Because the outer surface, what we are talking about, is only very thin layer, that which is creating all agitations. How much is the wave compared to the sea? What is the percentage? Not even 1%, not even 0.1%. When you compare to the depth of the sea, volume of the water, how much is that? 6 feet, okay, tide. How many feet down is the sea? So, what is the percentage like? It is nothing. So, very thin layer, that means very, very superficial, only can be affected by the externalities. One should remember this. Nothing, no externalities can destroy your depth of the mind. Even though we may call, okay, from deep of my mind I believe this. There are words to be used by the poets and the exaggerations that is to be created for the purpose of understanding and educating ourselves. That's all. That's okay, good to use that language. But when you go into reality, it is not that depth of the mind. After the superficial layer of the mind, the whole of mind is reflected by the jnanam of the antaratma. Like the moon is reflected from the sun, and the moon is only a reflection of sun. It stores that energy. Whenever the cloud covers that, it covers only the superficial of the moon, and when the cloud moves out, the moon's reflection comes the same, is it not? The cloud, whatever the cloud can try, it cannot penetrate into the moon and then stop the reflection of the moon from the inner self, inner side. It is only from the superficial side that it can block the reflection. Same way, in the mind it is the superficial layer which is agitated because of the attraction and attachment and desires and expectations of externalities. The superficial of the mind which is affected. Since our indriyas are functioning based on the information is received through the surface of the mind, anything that knowledge, suppose there is deeper, there is knowledge. Even though that knowledge is penetrating into the upper layer and coming out, it has to come through the upper layer. The upper layer is already infected by the, let me call it as infected by the attraction and of externalities, and it is agitated. That which is traveling through the external layer will appear to be agitated. Is it not? When the moon is in a disturbed surface, you will find the moon is divided into a number of parts because of the disturbed surface. Same way, the knowledge is broken. Let me call it as broken. It's not right actually to use it, but just for the purpose of explanation, it is divided into a number of parts which appears to be, that distorted, is why the agitation of the mind. That is why an indecisive decision, an indecisiveness takes place in our externalities or indriyas when we are functioning. That's why there are doubts, there are suspicions, there are a lot of other things happen because we don't know whether the knowledge is right, whether the knowledge is there. If the knowledge is there, is it right or not? And what is called knowledge? Is it that what I am studying is the knowledge? Or is it that what is stored inside the knowledge? If it is stored inside, from where it has come? Why am I not able to see that what is stored? Why am I not able to feel that what is stored? These are all the questions asked because we are functioning through the superficial of the mind or external mind, which is agitated always because of attraction and attachment of the externalities, because of the function of the indriyas, we sending the information to the inner self of it. When these attractions are stopped, that means these penetrations are stopped, then the inner knowledge is complete and there are no agitations in the superficial layer, is called stillness of the mind. Is that okay? This is called stillness. The stillness, what you are supposed to bring it only to the superficial of the mind, which is not the mind itself, not the whole of the mind. The whole of the mind doesn't create any knowledge. No. Mind doesn't create any knowledge. As I said, it's like moon. It reflects the reflection from the. These are beginnings chapters. We have already described it, but again, still, it's better to refresh those memories. How the mind, because that's important for this chapter to be understood properly. Why it is happening to us. Many people ask, why it is affecting me. Why not? Why am I not able to come out of it? These are the general questions asked. Why it is affecting you is because your superficial layer is already agitated because of these attractions, because of your desire or your attractions and attachments. And naturally, whatever you are putting in there will have to go through that agitation. Even if I put the knowledge, that's why many people are not interested to know the Vedanta or the Shastras or the Vedas, which is the basis of all the knowledges, or which is the basis of all that what is existing in this world. Call it as technology, medicine, fiction, non-fiction, anything for that matter. But there is a doubt. Many people say that what is the use of understanding this Vedic science? They are not gone into depth of it unless one goes into the depth of it. And definitely one goes into the depth of it, one would not say that, definitely not. But without seeing that, they are seeing only the external part of it. Seeing the external part means they are seeing through the external mind, is why these doubts are arising in the mind. That's why we call the doubts are arising in my mind. Where is the doubts coming to? Where is your doubt? Doubt is in the mind. Where is the doubt? I have doubts. I have doubts in my mind. Now this is what we say. We have no doubts in the knowledge. We have no doubts in the Atma. We have no doubts in the Antakarana. We have no doubts in any other thing. We have no doubts even in the Indriyas, functioning of Indriyas. Because functioning of Indriyas is supposed to be in touch with the externalities. There is no doubt. Where is the doubt? All the doubts are coming to the mind only. Why there is doubt in the mind? Because the superficial layer is agitated because of the externalities affecting the mind. So it is only a very thin layer, we have to take care of it. So in order to still the mind, what we call as stilling the mind is called the meditation or dhyanam. That's why this book is known as Meditation and Mantras. Meditation and mantras, that means dhyanam and mananat trayate iti mantraha. A mind which is still, which is under the influence of the stillness, this keeps chanting the mantras. Mananat trayate. Trayate means to save that from trayate, trahima. Trayate means to save the mind, to save me from the affliction from the externalities which creates agitation to the mind. Yes. Trayate trahimam, please save me. Hey Bhagavan, please save me. How can it save? By stillness, by bringing stillness to the superficial layer of the mind. That non-agitativeness is concerning only to the stillness of the mind, because in depth everything is calm. Inner mind is calm. That is why when we are sleeping, we are calm. When a baby is sleeping, you see, or even any person who is sleeping in his deep sleep, let him be a very bad person externally, outside. When he is sleeping, you look at his face, you will find the total innocence in that face. In deep sleep. In deep sleep, in everyone's face, you will find the absolute, that innocence you can find. That innocence comes from where? That non-agitative status of mind is reflecting on the face. You see. That's why this non-agitation is so still the mind. That is why I meant about the stilling the mind. In order to do dhyanam, this grantha says that dhyanam is that what is necessary. Dihi, buddhi, bodham has to be brought into stillness, in the sense that should be brought into the stillness means that should not be used or directed towards the attraction and agitation of the external objective mind. That's all. What do you mean by not getting attracted to externalities or external objects? Objects will be there, objects are there. No? You can feel it, you can see it. We cannot say it is not there, it is there. Even though when you go deeper into the studies of the Vedanta, that they are mithya. It is your own perception that is there, that we will be coming to that. Even though that is there, but for a normal person, for other who has not travelled through that path of absoluteness and trying to identify the complete, the self-realization or the Brahma Tattvam, Brahma Jnanam, for the others, they are all existing. Every small object, stone, earth, and then trees and plant, everything is there. It is existing. That is there. Let it be there. In dhyanam, what happens? Through dhyanam and through the mantras, mantraha, manana, trayate. Mana constantly, repeatedly chanting those to save will make an orientation to the mind, the superficial mind, to not to get attracted to those non-realities, not to negatives, not to get attracted to non-realities and get attracted to realities. That's also there. Okay? Not only by not getting attracted to non-realities, but get attracted to realities. Mananat trayate. Why I said this? Not getting attracted to non-realities, but getting attracted to realities. Why did I say that? Because that's the meaning of Trayate. Trahi mam. When I say Trahi, please save me, I'm referring to something to save me. That something is there, no? So get me attracted to that, something which will save me. And that which I am getting attracted to, save, should make me not getting attracted to that which cannot save me. Is why I told that non-realities and realities. Yes. This is called the stillness. This is why the mantra means Trayate. Don't take the literal meaning of it. It's not that chanting of mantras means the mana is repeating that what you are thinking, that whatever is being repeated by the mind. What should be repeated by the mind, that should be repeating, the mind should be repeating. The maximum point that what is there in the mind, which is 99%, which is called as knowledge. That should be chanting. That is the one which should be chanting, so that the 1% or 0.1%, which is the superficial or the surface of the mind which is agitated, should not get agitated, should get stopped, should get attracted to that which is called the stillness, what is called the quietness, what is called the calmness, what is called the peace, whatever you call it. When it is there is peace. When there is an agitation in the superficial part of it, there is no peace. When there is no agitation to superficial part of the mind, there is peace. It is not the superficial part of the mind which is creating the peace. The superficial part of the mind is stopping getting attracted to externalities. So automatically the peace which is prevalent get attracted to the superficial of the mind, and that becomes peaceful, is what we call it as peace of mind. Otherwise, the peace of mind is already there. Peace of mind is not to be created, need not be created, and nobody can create peace of mind. The peace of mind means what the true sense, in true sense what is that? The superficial mind through the indriyas should not get attracted and agitated because of the externalities. Let the externalities be there. You can see it, you can understand it, you can perceive it, but that should not be the cause of agitation to the mind. That one has to see. But is it possible? If you are concentrating, if you are understanding, if you are thinking about it, naturally you will have the agitation of you will be perceiving it. When you are perceiving it, you will have agitation of mind. So this should not happen. Otherwise, the man who is able to control that stillness of the mind, he can see all the objects without getting attached and attracted to. He can, but what happens? At that status of point of time, when the total stillness is there, where Trahimam is there, Mantra is there, mantra is going on, the Mananat Trayate, that intention of the mind, the total mind, depending upon something which is supposed to save me, which can save me, which saves me, is always connected with that. When it is connected with that, these penetrations from the externalities will not come into the way. Even though they are stronger, the externalities are stronger because of the desires and because of the indriyas and because of the information that is being constantly poured into the mind keeps on agitating. It doesn't give your mind time to think and stop, what should I do next? No. Before you finish one thought, the other thought is already penetrated in. So it doesn't give the mind time to relax and think or go into self and see, look at the down and then get attracted to. It doesn't give time. Because it's a constant inflow of that, you see. That constant inflow, when it is there, you are unable to stop it. Now, by evoking the inner self of mind or inner mind, mantra, mantra, I am stopping the attraction. That's why one is that closing the eyes, closing the organs, and closing the thoughts, still, and then think of something only. These are all, creating, these are all mediums in order to make the superficial layer not getting attracted to the externalities. That's all. Once that is done, then that trahi is done, saving is done. When that save me is done, then you go into dhyanam. That is the avastha which is known as dhyanam. Once you are in dhyanam, then you are at only one point. As I told you, dhyanam means it's not that nothingness. Shunyata we call. Remember I explained about shunyata earlier. Shunya is that without anything is the true literal meaning of it. That when there is something, then only we call there is something. When there is nothing or no thing is there, we call it as shunya. That means, does it mean like shunya? Like the vessel, the utensil that you are holding is shunya. Is it shunya in technical sense or real sense? No. It is, air is there, no, other things are there, whatever is in the atmosphere, it is there. But the thing what is supposed to be there or to occupy that area is not being occupied, is called the shunyata. Same way, in the mind also, the mind when it is non-agitative, whatever is existing in the mind, that's the reflection from the antaratma that is already there, is called the shunya avastha. That's the shunya avastha. Not getting other than what is there. Not getting what other than what is there is called the shunya avastha. That's shunya. When something else come up, then only the agitations, that non-compatibility, as I told you. Non-compatibility is the one which is creating the agitation. That should not happen. So, dhyanam is that avastha of the stillness of mind, you see. Not just simply people say, no, just let us do meditation. What is meditation? Dhyanam. In order to understand dhyanam, first of all, you have to understand what is dhyanam, no doubt about it. Who should understand? A mind who is entangled already with the objective pleasures and objective experiencing and entangled with the Maya, first has to understand what is called the stillness or what is called the dhyanam. The meaning of dhyanam has to be understood. When that is understood, then only you will be in a position to orient yourself towards that dhyanam. Well, some people, we may say that, okay, some jnanis and tapasvis and jnanis, they did not study beforehand that, what is dhyanam. They just went in. But what happened in them and in the person who is entangled with Maya, there is difference. One is that he has gone out of this Maya already, he has got intentionally in mind, he has gone out of Maya, so we say that he has gone to Himalayas, he has gone to mountain. And he is sitting there and doing dhyanam, closing his eyes and not physically or mentally he may be initially getting attached and attracted to the objective senses. But what happens? Having his intention implanted in his mind that I do not want any connection with the world, that which is external to me, I do not want any connection, have taken a decision of his own and went into the dhyanam. Automatically what happens? During the process of that dhyanam, where he sits there and closes his eyes throughout, not eating, not getting, attracted to anything, not doing any of the karmas that is supposed to be done in the world, nothing is being done. So he has no further new experiences happening. When there is no further experiences happening and the results are not happening, what happens? The mind, whatever is there thinking before he came there, whatever was there, he exhausts it at one point of time. Because there is no more input taking place, only whatever is there, that has to be emptied, that's all. This emptying takes place for him, quietly sitting alone there without eating, without drinking, no association, nothing under a tree, whatever we call it, no, in that aloneness, everything is being emptied. Having emptied that, then he gains the dhyana avastha. And once he gains the dhyana avastha, then he is orienting his dhyana avastha towards the Brahman, and then he attains the Brahma dhyana and Brahma tattva. This is how it happens. But for a person who is already entangled with the Maya, first of all he has to make the mind understand, or the in the superficial mind understand that these are all Maya, and I am supposed to go into the dhyanam in order to identify the truth of me. That intention or that idea has also to be put along with the other agitations. There's so many informations are going. This input has to be put in, and then you have to grow that insight every day. Growing means what? Every day you do. So what happens? It should take over, gradually it should take over all the other thoughts which are coming. This it becomes what we call it as, we say, the priority in mind. How do we create priority in mind? Priority in mind, that we keep that as very important to us, and only after that the other things I will do. It's called priority. And this priority can be created out of necessity. Priority comes when? When you have necessity. When you don't have necessity, ठीक है, बाद में देखेंगे. That's not second priority. So the priority has to come, necessity has to come. So you have to create that urge or intention or the necessity inside that this is important to me. So let me put it in some crude form of physical application of it, just to explain. Whenever every thought comes, along with that I must put that, no, I want to do this also, dhyanam also. Another thought comes, I must eat, I must do dhyanam also. This thought is coming, but along with that, I will always trail behind those thoughts which are agitating me. So what happens? In every thought trailing behind will be the thought that I must meditate. This becomes, at a point of time, this becomes the priority. This becomes first. I must do meditation, then the second will be I must eat. A stage will come like that. When, with every thought trailing behind, should be with that I must do meditation, I must have the Brahmajnanam, I must have the Brahma Tattva. Even I want to drink a glass of water, I must have Brahmajnanam. I want to eat, I must have Brahmajnanam. I want to go out, I must have Brahmajnanam, Brahma Tattva, along with that. So what happens? Every thought, like personifying them. At a point of time, every thought will look at, wherever he looks, he will see only that I want to have the Brahmajnanam, Brahma Tattva. So, you have seen that ad, mosquitoes ka ad dekha hai na? That even though the flock of mosquitoes come there and all that, they have put one that repellent one is there. So one mosquito telling the other mosquito, no, don't go there. Have you noticed that? One mosquito telling the other one, don't go there. They have got such and such mosquito repellent placed there, so it's not safe to go there. Same way, our thoughts will start telling each other, don't go there. There's already implanted there that they are going on meditation. Is jokingly expressed, but no, a way of trying to understand that. No, this is what happens. At last, what happened? This will happen, and then you are there. That's how that dhyani, or the one who is some saint, sannyasi, muni, they are doing that dhyanam constantly, meditating themselves only because they have repelled all those infectious thoughts which will create agitation to superficiality of the mind. Is how the dhyanam should be created. Is why Swamiji has written this book. This brought this knowledge to us, and he has detailed in each, and he has repeated number of times. Here you will find here itself, even though few slokas are left, here itself you will find there are a lot of repetitions. Many ways he is trying to attack, so that any way your mind tries to say, to escape, to come back to the material attraction and attachment, he will stop there by his thoughts. Is why he has repeated number of times, and that is why we are undergoing this exercise. You may think that if it is dhyanam, why have we to read all this and understand this? They are all trahimam, visatrayate mantra. These are all mantras. That means the mind, when we start understanding all these things, our orientation of the inner self of mind will be connected to these thoughts, give priority to these thoughts, and our attachment and attraction is, I won't say it will not be there, it will be there, but our attraction and attachment will have low priority as far as the perception of the mind is concerned. Whenever those thoughts come, if I have nothing else to do, then only I will entertain those thoughts. Even if I entertain those thoughts, which I told you earlier also, even when a man who has already realized and have brought the stillness and who is in dhyanam, he will entertain the thoughts. It's not that he will not. He may entertain the thoughts, but he will not let that thought affect the superficial of his mind in order to create agitation. No. He will keep it away to that distance. He will keep away. Because when the thought comes, he will distribute it or solve it and dissolve it at the right point, and then not allowing the inner peace or inner consciousness or inner peace of the Brahmajnanam, Brahmatattvam of the self, leave it there as it is, so that he is at peace always. All other things will be handled externally. Prasadam is always distributed out of sanctum sanctorum of the temple, not from inside, isn't it? Inside the sanctum sanctorum, only the puja is done. Whatever prasada coming out of it is brought out, and then you go there and you take it same way. In the self who has already attained that stillness and dhyana avastha, he distributes the prasadam from outside, not from inside. Here the puja is done. Here the worship is done. From that worship, whatever is coming out is called a prasadam. That prasadam that is there, that is the one which is dealing with the externalities, with the maya or objective thoughts and experiences. Let me put it that way. Because of that, it is not affecting the inner self or inner mind of it. This is how one has to act for it. Then only we can create dhyanam. Then only we can go into dhyanam, is why these mantras are being understood. We already covered quite a lot of it. We have lot of things have been talked about it. They are all meant for only for this purpose. Trahima, trayate, he mana, trahi, trahe mana, trayate iti mantra, trayata, mantra, ananat, trayate. Mana should repeat that trahimam, trahimam. Mana should repeat that. Mana, what does it mean that mana should repeat? Not verbally I am talking about, you must understand. When we are talking these are all Vedantically we have to understand. Mana repeating in the sense, it's okay, many people took it as physical repetition. No doubt about it, one can do it, that's a karma, that's vocal, that is no vaikhari, that is externally, that is being talked about. But what I mean by trahimam is that the inner conscious of the mind or the inside the mind, in our mind, we should have constantly the mantra, or one should have constantly the consciousness of trahi, trahi, trahi. Has to be there in the mind. Save me, save me, save me. Save me means what? Save me from the thieves, save me from the wrongdoing, save me from the wrong people, save me from the wrong things, save me from the objects, save me from the attraction, save me from the desires, save me from this. That's what is called save me. Trahi, trahi. This trahi has to be always there. That's called the constantly chanting the mantras. So when we chant these mantras, why it has become a physical activity? Later on, it has become a physical activity. Just chant mantras. One should not misunderstand that. There are so many people chanting mantras. They become, it's just automatic. No, we also chant mantras many times. Just automatic, not from the mind. Just because having learned the mantra, you keep on chanting. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Is it really consciously you are chanting? No. You're not. It's only chanting. So that chanting has become the external of, here what happens, it's only the tongue and the mouth and the throat is only active for chanting Om Namah Shivaya, that's all. They have no impression that is happening inside the mind. But even if you don't chant, the verbally chanting is not necessary. The mind should keep on chanting Trahimam He Brahman Am Brahmasmi 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 Brahma Tattum Brahman. This mind has to be involved in that chanting. That is called chanting. Chant is not a verbally chanting is okay. The chanting is prescribed. This Om Namah Shivaya, Panchakshari mantra, this mantra, Sahasranama, Vishnu Sahasranama, this Sahasranama, Lalita Sahasranama, all these have been mantras. We were told to chant them. Why are we chanting? So that the mind should be concentrating on that chanting. Now instead of that, what happens, because of our practice of chanting, initially some involvement of mind will be there. After we have by-hearted it, what happens? The mind again has gone back to its own activity, the surface of the mind. The mouth and the tongue and the throat will keep on chanting. Is there in the memory. From memories, he has created a memory cell. From memory cell, directly the action to the indriyas keep on going. The mind by itself says that now, save me from you, chant. He says. That should not happen. Trahima. The other way around. That should not happen. That should not. This is what is happening. Is it not? I would like to go into detail, that is why. So one should understand. This is what is happening. Ultimately, the chant has become important. The purpose for why we are chanting is not become important. That importance of that purpose is lost. You ask somebody, why are you chanting? To please the God, to please this, please that. A lot of answers will be there. But the transformation of the mind of non-agitative status has to happen by your chanting. This is called chanting. Whatever you chant. There was a story, I was watching television. There was a cook making food, cooking food in the kitchen for the Swamiji and others. So when he had an opportunity to discuss with Swamiji, how is it possible that we can see God? For him, he says, seeing God is called Brahman. That's what he means. How can we see God? You are chanting so many mantras. You teach me one mantra, by chanting of which I can see the God. And he is a Pandit, Swamiji, who knows all the Shastras, all the mantras, who has been advising others, who does a lot of things. Every day this man will ask Swamiji, tell me some mantra so that I can also do something like, not only cooking food, let me also do something. His desire was very high. We kept on pestering the Swamiji every day. One day he got angry with him, fed up of him. He told him something like, so I don't remember the exact sentence because it's so long back. It's something which is not very important. I forgot the sentence, but the meaning is that coconut shell and rock and something like that. When you rub coconut shell, the sound comes, or something like that. One sentence he tells him. And this man, he doesn't know anything. So that is a chant for him. Why I am telling you this example, chanting, That has become the chant for him. So people heard him chanting this and all said, yeah, he has gone mad. Things like that. But what happened? His mind was focused on that. The chant has become secondary for him. The mind only. I want to see God. See what is his importance? I want to see God. That is why I am chanting this. You see, what you chant. This is what has been advised by Swamiji. I am chanting that, but I want to see the God. His mind was totally involved, and the chant has become secondary. And he witnessed the God. Is what the story says. He has seen the God, but Swamiji has not seen the God so far. So one day it so happened that he has got the enlightenment. The cook has got enlightenment, and everybody knows about it, and he started talking all that Brahma Tattva. Swamiji comes and prays to him and tell him that, look, I'm sorry and I have done this and that. He said, doesn't matter. What you told me is absolutely right. Because of that only I could see the God. So what I'm trying to tell you is that chant, it should not be important. I mean, the mind, the purpose for which you are chanting should be important. This is the one example. That's the example they were telling that. What you chant, Trahimam. But he understood that, he did not understand the meaning of a rock and the coconut shell. And he said, if I chant this, I can see the God. That's all. His intention was only on the God. Not analyzing the mantra, meaning of the mantra, or things like that. But whereas the Swamiji or the Shastri who was chanting, he was understanding the meaning of it, then understanding, then chanting and this, that. Then also he could not see because his mind was not there. His chant, because he is learned, he keeps on chanting, that's all. Anybody comes, anyone in sleep, you ask him to chant something, he will sleep, he will chant. He's expert on that. But what happens? Mind is not involved in the chant. Trahi, mantraha means what? The mana should be in the chant. The chant, not the chant in the mana. Mananat trayate iti mantra. The mind, that mind which whatever it repeats is called a mantra. Not the mantra, that which repeats is the mana. No. Mananat trayate. Mind that repeats is called a mantra. Mind, whatever it repeats. So whatever in the sense, that intention has to be there. That's called the, what we call it as, whenever you have, what do you call it as, intention? Sankalpa has to be there. That sankalpa, unless that sankalpa is there, this is not possible. That is why mananath trayate iti mantra. So mana should be in a position to do the trayate, the mantra, ucharan should be there. That is called. Then only that stillness is possible. So that what happens, when the mind is involved in the chant, the externalities will not obstruct and try to penetrate the superficiality of the mind, which is only the thin layer, will not get agitated. Is it not? Like when we wear a shirt, where is the dirt accumulating from outside? It is only shirt, not inside the body. The same way the minds, the superficial layer of the mind, which is the one which creates all these problems. If we call it as problem, of course. They are the ones which are getting attached, attracted, because that is the through which all the informations are being passed through the inner mind of things. So when that is agitated, the information that is being fed to the knowledge is also agitated. Is why the indriyas, but whereas when the indriyas are attracting these things and sending it to the mind of the agitation, automatically the agitated information is collected. The result, even though through the jnanam it is analyzed that it is wrong, and being transmitted through the superficial layer to the indriyas, what happens? Gets also agitated. So you are not sure whether it is right or wrong. This is how we get suspicious of right and wrong, you see, because of the input going through the agitated superficial layer. So in order to stillness that, in order to still, is called the anam. So mananat trayate. Trayate. So just when I told you about chanting is good. But what happens when it becomes automatic? What happens? It comes from the memory cell, which can be destroyed when it is not in use. That's all. But when the mind is involved in the chant, never it can be destroyed. That's why we forget whatever we learn, is it not? After so many days of not practicing, after we learn, this gets dissolved, this gets disappeared, this gets forgotten, we call it. Forgotten. That means what? That we have got is forbidden, is forgotten. So at one point of time we gotten it, another time we forgotten it. Okay, this is how it happens. It has no connection with the mind. So what is the use of chant then? What's the use of chant if you have to forget the chant? What is the use of chant? So what happens when the mind is given, like what we said about that story, the mind is involved, which mananat trayate. Manaha, what is doing the trayate? Trayate is secondary, mana is first. So when trayate becomes first, then the mana becomes secondary, then we will not be able to remember that we have forgotten that. This is how the superficial layer of the mind, which is very, very critical, very difficult for the people who are entangled with Maya, entangled with the activities, entangled with the karma and karma yoga, everywhere what happens. This entanglement creates the problem, is why Swamiji specifically explains about the... Now I just wanted to introduce that why dhyanam and why should we go through this for dhyanam is not, let's just keep quiet. Can you bring the stillness by doing the activity? If you can, then there's no problem. Nothing else to be learned actually, if that is the case, because we are learning everything in order to bring us that stillness and then to orient ourselves only to that Brahman, so that we will be in a position to get the liberation from this. Mukti is the intention of everything, all activities. We want to get mukti from everything. We want to get liberation from everything. Kaivalya from everything, is not. We want Kaivalya. That's why we are doing. Why are we? I want to finish that job. I am never saying that I want to continue with that job. I want to finish that job. Karma, whatever karmas are. We want to finish it. We are doing everything to finish it, not to create it again. So whatever we do, we have to finish it. That's called Kaivalya. Mukti from that. One day when we have no more karmas, only then the stillness comes, that non-agitative status of mind comes. This is status. For that what happens? The input should not be there. At a point of time, the only method how to stop that agitation of the surface of the mind is that at a point of time you have to block the input. That is already there. We cannot do anything. That has to be exhausted. We are not allowing that to be exhausted is because of the constant infiltration to the mind. We are not in a position to exhaust what is there. That's why we call it as karma phalas. We keep that karma phala for some other janma to sort out. Why should we wait for another janma to exhaust that karma phala? If I have created a karma phala in this janma, why not I am in a position to fulfill that karma phala in this janma itself? Is it not better? Instead of taking another janma and undergoing all this process of it, is called Kaivalya. But how can I do it? Why? Because, why am I not doing it? Is this intentional? No. Why? Because I am not practiced for that. I am practiced only to receive. I have never learned how to renounce. I have learned only how to get it, where to get it, how I can desire, how can I expectations, how I can do this, how can I do this. Let it be there. But that, now what happens? The desire should be, if the desire is 2%, and if the exhausting is 98%, 98 minus 2, at least 96% can be exhausted mathematically, isn't it? Plus and minus, even if you minus 2, 90. Here what happens is that 90% input and desire for exhausting is 2. It's why we are not in a position to exhaust the same karma phalas in this janma itself. But those karma phalas which are temporary, there are 3 kinds of karma phalas, we know that. One is temporary, one is medium, which can be sorted out in recent janma. One is a long lasting one. It can store for another 7 years or 7 janmas. It will come after 6 janmas or 7 janmas. No. Long term effect. One is that rose plant which will give you flowers in 1 month's time. Mango trees will give you mangoes once in 5 years, or 6 years, or 3 years, whatever it is. So, like that, there is a difference. No? The karma phala, it depends upon that. There are some temporary karma which can be exhausted immediately. That we are doing because that it comes in the 2%, so we are able to handle it properly. But when it goes beyond 2%, I have to keep it. There's no time. It has to be kept always pending. Because the inflow is very, it's not relative, it is constant. And constant inflow is there. Nityam, it is constant, it is there. Is why we are not in a position to exhaust the karma phalas in the same janma. That's not possible. That's why we accumulate and has to take a birth. Whereas a saint, a dhyani or a saint, a sannyasi, or a rishi, tapasvi, jnani, what happens? He stops the input. Is why normally dhyanam is practiced by closing the eyes. What is the significance of closing the eyes? Not seeing the external world. If I can keep my eyes open, my dhyanis, sons, great men, great gurus, great tapasvis and great jnanis, even if they keep their eyes open, if they don't want to see the object, they will not see the object. They will see only the inner self of it. So, in tapasya or in meditation, closing the eyes have become only to make our mind not getting attracted to external things. It's only an instrument. This, by closing the eyes, you don't become a dhyani. No. By closing the eyes, you don't become a dhyani. I want you to understand the technicality of that. Why are you close the eyes, no problem. But why are you closing the eyes? You should know. It's only for me to distract me from the externalities. That means I am not allowing the inputs to come in. The moment I am keeping my eyes open, I am allowing all this, every moment of all what I am seeing is keeping on coming. How can I exhaust? How can I release it from there? If there is an inflow is constant, I cannot. There's only one way. That's why in the temple, in the Garbhagriha, there's only one temple, one dwara. In Garbhagriha, there's only one dwara. There's no 3-4 doors are not there, only one door is there. Not even windows are not there. Nothing is there. Why? Because either it's one way. Either you pray and just submit yourself. After submitting, keep quiet. Get the Ashirvada. Here it is not like that. What we do? We would like to discuss with the God when we come in front of the Garbhagriha, is it not? Even if you close the eyes, no doubt. But keeping on discussing with Him. Please do this, please do that. Some commands are there, some requests are there, some complaints are there, some specifications, some advice is also there. You should have done this to me last year. Some advice also we give. This keeps on going. So what happened? Neither the Ashirvada can come out, nor the request can go in. There is a conflict there. So there is only one dwara. Jokingly, there is something like that. You just think logically, yes, is it right or wrong? Same thing happens to the mind. If I am getting constant input, how can I exhaust it? Not in a position to exhaust. Stop for some time. Let it go. Right? If you keep on pouring something into it, how will you clean the glass? At one point, stop pouring it. Let it exist. Then उसके बाद में उसको धो लेना. If you keep on pouring, how can I wash it? It's not possible. Same way in our karmas also, renunciation is absolutely necessary. This renunciation, process of renunciation, in order to have the stillness of mind, so that I can exhaust the karma phalas, is the problem. Once that process is taking place, once it is taken place, then only the stillness of the superficial layer of the mind happens, and then we are in the status of dhyana. Nothing disturbs me. At a point of time, nothing disturbs me. Jnanam will never disturb. It is ajnanam that is disturbing, actually, because that's the one which is creating agitations. Jnanam is within me, within everyone, within every jivatma, within everyone, you, me, an insect and an elephant and the tree, everywhere it is there, jnanam. The jnanam cannot disturb. Jnanam brings peace only. The jnani gets all peace in the world, what we call. Because there is nothing that is... Why is he not getting disturbed with all these things? Because he's made the jnanam as the priority, allowed not to give any input to the mind anymore. But what we do is that we constantly having input to the mind, we constantly having the inflow to the mind, because it's not in our hands, because it is not in our control, because it keeps on coming, because that is our practice. We have got used to it actually, that keeping on receiving it, keep it open, so we keep on receiving it. And more we keep on receiving it, the inflow continues till you are in deep sleep. You constantly keep on doing it. Even in the Swapna Avastha, also keep on giving that Swapna, In Swapna Avastha also you are not allowing the mind to be free. Only in the deep sleep state, that's why the Upanishads and the Vedas and the Shastras, they compare our Dhyana Avastha, or compare our Brahmajnanam, Brahmatattvam, and Leena, that layer into the Brahman is as the Sushupta Avastha. We call it as Sushupta Avastha, not Sushupti. Sushupti is different. Sushupta Avastha we call it, Sushupta Avastha. The status of the deep sleep state has to come when you are awake. That's why Sushupta Avastha. Okay. This is what he is trying to tell us during the process of Jnanam. Is what it is. This is where it is it necessary or not? Now what do we think? Is it necessary to understand? Is why through Jnanam we understand all this analysis. What is that Jnana Marga? In Bhakti Margam what happens? Bhakti Marga, good, no doubt about it. No, don't have to know many things. But in one has to have very strong intention in Bhakti Marga. Bhakti Marga mein no, don't see left and right, only surrender to the God. That's called Bhakti. Lot of belief, lot of faith, lot of surrender has to be there. The moment you ask something, the moment you talk something to the mind, the Bhakti is gone. It's not Bhakti. Bhakti is not an emotion. Bhakti is not an emotion. Bhakti is an inherent nature of the human. It has to be there. There has to be dedication. That's why they call it as dedication and devotion. They always, bring two together. Bhakti and Shraddha. Bhakti and Shraddha. Or it should be the other way around. Shraddha and Bhakti. It should be that way. Shraddha comes first, then comes the Bhakti. What is Shraddha? Shraddha is being only in the total belief. In Bhakti Marga, in total faith, total belief has to be there. There cannot be one iota of doubt also. Not even one. Oh, I am ill. So many, we all complain, no? Bhagwan bhi humko punishment deta hai. Both many people talk to me. आजकल भगवान भी हमको छोड़ दिया बोलता है, पकड़ के रखा हुआ था तो क्या? These are all our concepts. You see what happens. We have personal requirement there. You see. The moment you come that is no more bhakti. That is vyavaharik. You see, that's vyavahara. Vyavaharik, no. Paramarthik nahi. It is not a paramarthik sthiti. Vyavaharik. The business is that vyavaharik. In Vyavaharik there is no bhakti, it's Vyavahara only. I pray to you, you give me this afterwards, after 1 year when I want something else, I will come to you and again pray. Then you give me. Vyavaharik. That's not bhakti. Shraddha. That's why they said that, oh, there is a problem. My Maharishis or Swamijis must have taught Maharishis. Only bhakti, if I say, this man will keep this dialogue. So let me put another word in front of that. Shraddha and bhakti. What is Shraddha? Shraddha is that constant faith. It's called Shraddha. What Shraddha? What is Shraddha otherwise? Shraddha is constant faith. Incessant, constant, absolute. We call it as an absolute. That absolute faith has to be there in the bhakti. Otherwise, bhakti is not bhakti. In bhakti, there is no requirements. There are no needs. There is no receiving. In bhakti, there is only giving. You see. So that strength has to be there. In some people, they got it by inherent, maybe because of the Purva Janma Karma Bala that is there in them, and they have it. There are so many people. But with the bhakti, how many people have got the enlightenment? we can count like Prahlada, Shabari, and this, that. So people are there, we can count on them. Because it is very difficult path. Even though people say it is easy in the sense, yes, it is easy, there is nothing else to be practiced. But the mind has to be toned up in such a manner that we should have a constant, absolute faith and that Shraddha has to be there. Then when that Shraddha will automatically turn into Bhakti. When a person having constant Shraddha that turns into Bhakti, then there is no more classification of Shraddha there. So they are one actually, if you compare, if you really look into it, they are one. Like in Vedanta say, like Bhakti Marga or Jnana Marga or any Marga, they are all one. Because ultimately everything leads you to that Jnanam, that Brahman is everything. Even Bhakti Marga leads you that God is everything, or Brahman is everything. Jnana Marga also, after learning all these things, you come to that point. Brahman is everything, nothing else is important. Any other path also, Sannyasa Marga, any Marga you take, you go into that path. Ultimately it comes to the knowledge to renounce everything. Knowledge not to accept everything. Whatever you have learned also is not necessary once you have understood once you have reached the status of Layam. Of Brahman is no more necessary. So in order to understand that, basically the mind has to bring the superficiality of the layer of agitated mind, which their constant flow is there, has to be stopped, so that the agitation has to be stopped. Then the renunciation takes place. After stopping the agitation, renunciation takes place. After renunciation, dhyanam. Then only dhyanam comes. Not simply sitting somewhere and closing the eyes. Feeling something is not dhyanam. Feeling something is input only. Some people imagine, some people feel, some people experience something. It's all input only. The true dhyan, when there is a true dhyanam, in true dhyanam there is no input, only the expression of the great absolute knowledge of the Brahman, nothing else. Where my mind is no more active, it becomes a part of the Antaratma. Today the mind is separate for us, because it has got an activity that is not. That when you do a dhyanam, then the mind is not a separate part of this, it becomes one with that, so there is no mind. So they call it as no mind, nischalata of the mind, no mindlessness, thoughtlessness, shunyata. There are so many classifications and words and interpretations that is being given for that things. They're all the same, meaning is all the same. So this is what it is. Only one more shloka is there. Or shall we postpone it to tomorrow? This introduction. So perceive this. This is very important. Yes. Tomorrow, not tomorrow. Next Tuesday, no? Or Thursday.
Tuesday.
Now I have to ask you. Stage is come.
Tuesday.
What is it? A proverb? The well going to the water. कुआं पानी पे पानी हो जाता है. Something. Okay, let us have it on Tuesday. Let us continue with that. So we will be we have completed 95 sessions on that. 95. This will be our 96th session. We are on the in this chapter 10th shloka. Ninth we have finished. 10th we will be doing that. 9th I will take a little bit of 9th, so that to link with this, then go for the 10th. Almost 8 o'clock I would have stopped otherwise. Okay. Om Shanti, shall we? Perceive it, contemplate it. Don't, as Manana Trayate, Trayate is not important, same way. Listening is not important. After listening, perceiving and contemplation is important. You have to repeat this for something, maybe immediately after going out today. Sit for 15 minutes, because even though I spoke about less than an hour, of course, so long, But you can perceive it in 5 to 10 minutes time. That's all. It doesn't require more time. In order to establish and perceive it, it takes only 5 to 10 minutes maximum. So perceive it so that what happens, it is there. Then tomorrow I'll put that, add to that. We will add to that. That is why contemplation is necessary. Just otherwise what happens, it will just drain out like that. Let it contemplate, let it be there, perceive it properly so that we can, in perceiving there is another advantage also, as I told you, the inflow, we are also restricting them to come in because there is already that mosquito repellent is there. There they go. Dor mein baitha hua hai. Perceived already, it's better. So better not go there. This has to happen. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.